Hi, Dr. Paul Donovan here, and today, the power problem of losing your temper. This is a real issue for so many managers. Managers who lose their temper don't know that that lack of self-control at that moment is in fact a use and abuse of power. Now, they don't feel it at that moment, and when I say they, hey, I'm also in this boat. When anyone loses their temper, especially when they're in a position of rank, they often don't feel powerful. They don't feel like they're using power, but in fact, they are using their power. How are they doing this? They're engaging in a behavior of losing their temper that no one else in that room probably has the freedom to do. Did you catch that? You see, if other people in the room, people who are less senior, lose their temper in meetings, they're likely to be taken aside and performance managed, or even fired. Those who don't have the rank in the room don't have the freedom to lose their temper. But if you're the boss, if you have rank, then suddenly you've got freedom to lose your temper, and if you do, it is an abuse of power. So losing your temper, well, in some cases, it's so obvious when it happens, right? We know it when someone loses their temper. But it's more widespread than that. When managers fail to sustain or maintain their own sense of composure, and that's what's underneath this power problem, then they can engage in all sorts of other behaviors which are equally as problematic. They can become more bullying, overly pushing, exposing some members of the team in front of others, doing all sorts of behaviors that actually create a lack of safety in that room. So losing your temper or doing the other things like it when a manager is unable to sustain or maintain their composure, well, that's a power problem. So what do we do about it? Where do we go to from here? Well, in the first instance, if you're someone who loses your temper, you probably feel guilty about it and maybe even ashamed. Now, they're painful feelings, but they're not enough. They don't tend to stop us doing it. So I want to invite you to remember that if you lose your temper, you're a member of a very, very large club called humanity that can lose their temper from time to time. So let's drop the guilt about it. It won't help you overcome or avoid this problematic pattern. The second piece of advice is request help from your team. Now, I know that's going to be edgy, but explain to your team that sometimes you get hot under the collar. Sometimes you get frustrated or may lose your temper, and explain to your team at a time when you're not losing your temper that you acknowledge you can get into that behavior and ask your team for feedback when they think that's happening. Now, that's pretty critical, isn't it? And the reason why it's so important is because if you're the one losing your temper, you are unaware of yourself at that moment. You barely know it's happening. So if you've given permission to your team to give you feedback when it's occurring, then that's a moment when you can stop. Especially they can give you feedback early up in the process. Before you've got to 9 out of 10, 3 or 4 out of 10, if they can give you feedback, you can interrupt it right there. And then we can begin to avoid this pattern of losing temper. So, this is not easy to overcome. Losing your temper is something that many of us have developed practices in doing over many years. You'll probably need help. I recommend that you get a coach, someone who can come beside you and support you to unhook from this power problem. Thanks, everybody. Be sure to check out our other videos, our other micro workshops on the common power problems that managers experience. Thanks again to Dr. Julie Diamond for her work from which we've adapted these pieces.